It is good to be here. Thank you, Pastor Pizarro, for trusting us. And you guys have an awesome thing going. It's just really awesome to be a part of what's happening here. And Brother and Sister Wolf, this is awesome. I know you guys have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this. And it's bearing fruit. And Anthony, that was an amazing testimony. I love hearing testimonies like that because, you know, it gives everybody else like, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. Yeah. You know, now you look like you got everything handled. So this is really awesome. So just thank you guys for being here too.
We count it an honor and a privilege to be with all of you. You guys are an incredible group of people, and those that we've already met, those we haven't met yet, or that we met tonight already, what a privilege to be here with all of you. And like Pastor Anthony Pizarro said earlier, none of us are better than the other person. We are all fallen. We are all broken. We're all in need of healing. And this is just one of those areas of healing that we can talk about. And unfortunately, it's one of those silent issues. I'm really thankful Pastor Anthony said, everyone just say pornography, right? This is something that actually affects more people than other drugs and things like alcohol, gambling, etc. And we'll give you some of those numbers. And so it's the effects are so great that we can't not talk about it.
Yeah, we're privileged. And it's actually really cool to do this here because James, in the Bible, the book of James, it says, confess your faults one to another. And so what we're doing is a very biblical thing. But it's very hard to do, right? Because this is a place we have to take off our mask. So Karissa and I are, yeah.
Not the COVID mask.
Not the COVID mask. I said it and I thought that was funny. It's kind of the world we live in, right? Karissa and I work with couples from all over the world and individuals. And addiction is, Karissa's a therapist, I'm a life coach. And we've been coaching and counseling for around 10 years. So we've seen a lot of people in our office and talked face to face. I said it's one of the professions where we get very personal. We ask really hard questions, and we see a lot of pain. And it's one of those professions where, the mask, the real, like the metaphorical mask that we put on that everything is fine and don't I look great, but inside they're just falling apart. We see that on a daily basis. So saying porn and working around the idea of pornography is it's a reality, and it's actually normalized for us because it's a massive issue in the world. And actually what we're going to present to you, we'll have a solution, but we also want to show, that pornography is not seen now as a problem just inside of the church. It's actually being deemed as, and there's a big argument, is pornography an addiction? I think that's very well demonstrated, and we're going to show you some of the statistics, and then how do we get out of it?
So, in fact, 1 in every 4 searches on the internet are for pornography.
Slow that down.
1 in every 4.
Just think about, so going to Amazon, going to Netflix, going to all these places that people go to. Yep. Everything. 1 in 4 searches are for pornography.
We're really part of a grand experiment. And here's the issue that researchers are coming up against. There's no control group because virtually everybody has been exposed to pornography. In fact, there was a study done recently on Australians in the 15 to 29-year-old category. This is so unheard of. Like, we could say almost everybody, right? Like 90-something%. In the 15 to 29-year-old category for this Australian study, 100% of them had been exposed to pornography. Every single person that responded. And it was a significant number. I can't remember. It was hundreds of people or thousands of people. 100% of them had been exposed. And the first exposure, you guys, the average age of first exposure is now between the ages of 8 and 11. And this is just with the invitation from internet pornography. Because back in the day, someone had to find magazines and go to an adult store, and they were exposed by accident. Now we're desensitized. You know, we're seeing on popular pages and thumbnails of other related videos, we're seeing half-naked people, and we're desensitized. So it's a very systematic desensitization that we're undergoing, and everyone's exposed. So here's an issue we come up against often. We work with couples, and we will work with couples that come into our office, and they, Christian couples. We work with non-Christian couples as well, but we'll work with Christian couples that come in, and there's, I was exposed to pornography at whatever age, depends, but let's say conservatively speaking, age 15, okay? And then they come in, well, the average age of marriage right now is 29 for men, 27-ish for women. So they come in at 29, 30 years old. They've been exposed and now addicted to pornography for half their life. And they said, well, I thought it would stop when we got married because now I have the real deal, right? Now I have sex with my wife. It doesn't stop. They've been exposed and systematically desensitized to real love over the years, and they don't respond anymore.
So Gary Wilson, who has a book called Your Brain on Porn, he's not religious, he said. And he said that, because people say, once I get married, I'm going to just, drop off this urge to look at pornography. And what he said is internet porn is as different from real sex as today's video games are from checkers. Because it's vastly different. Mm-hmm. And if you want to, well, we're talking, so you guys are going to get it. We'll get in a little bit into the brain science of why that is. Mm-hmm. But it's extremely different. Our brains are not hardwired for this kind of exposure. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing huge, huge consequence in our culture right now for what's been going on behind closed doors that we don't talk about for years and years and years now.
So there's this big debate in the world of psychology that says, is addiction to pornography actually an addiction? Or should we just call it dependency or dysfunction? Can we truly call it addiction? So there have been 55 to date empirically validated studies that look at the brain from a scientific perspective. So fMRI scans, EEGs, they look at neurochemical, so hormone changes, okay? So 55 studies have been done to date. And 54 of those 55 studies found actual brain changes, okay? So physiological changes in the brain for folks who had been using pornography repetitively. And so the brain changes actually mirror the neurological findings in substance addiction studies. So
substances like heroin and cocaine.
Or alcohol.
Right? Or alcohol. Mm-hmm. The same changes in the brain are happening. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, I'm watching porn, but this is really bad. The same things are developing in pornography users and substance abuse users, which is actually an interesting finding, right? Yeah. So people might be like, oh, no, that still doesn't work for me.
And the difference between pornography users and cocaine or alcohol users, for example, cocaine and alcohol hooks about 10% of its users. So, most people have been exposed to alcohol. Most people have been exposed to some sort of drug, but most of them don't get hooked, right? They say about 10% get hooked. The numbers are a lot different for pornography exposure. Virtually 100% of people get exposed to some sort of pornography in their lifetime, usually by the age of 18. And about 74 to 75% of millennials, so up to the 35 category, so 18 to 35 or so, get hooked. So basically they don't want to be exposed further, but they're driven to be exposed further.
And here's why. So when the dopaminergic systems are firing at the highest, so dopamine is the drug that makes us go want stuff, right? So you're like, I want a new car. If I just get that new car, I'll be happy. So dopamine is pushing us, it's pushing us to find the reward, right? And hit the reward centers. I heard someone asking, hey, why do billionaires still work? Have you ever thought of that? You got everything. Like, you got yachts, you got planes, you got stuff, you got everything you could think of, right? Why do they still work? Why do they want more? That's good. Why do they want more? Right, because dopamine isn't like, okay, we're good now. We want more. Then we want more. Then we want more, then more, then more, right? So dopamine is always pushing us for that more. So when that stock trader, billionaire, sees his chart, he gets a dopamine hit. Pow. And then when he sees it again, he makes more money. Dopamine hit. And that's what they're chasing, is that dopamine hit. You guys have probably researched this, talking about drug addiction. That's that addictive property. So why do billionaires keep working? They want that dopamine hit again.
So we could go on and on about how pornography addiction actually does exist, but what are the effects of pornography addiction, even from a non-biblical perspective? We could talk about spiritual effects, but let's talk about other effects. 56% of all divorces have at least one partner who has an obsession with pornography. So we're not saying pornography is the cause of that divorce, but we're certainly saying there's a correlation here. There have been multiple studies, over 40 studies, that actually link porn use with sexual problems and lower arousal to sexual stimuli. So this is where we kind of compare the real love versus pornography issue. And actually, so we were talking about correlation earlier. Get this, there's actually causation implied, because in a lot of these studies where they see sexual issues, lower sexual response to real relationship, if they eliminate porn use, their sexual responses come back. So this is not just correlation, we're seeing causation here as well. So porn is affecting their sexual relationship. Over 80 studies link porn use to less relationship satisfaction. So we're not talking just sex life, but relationship satisfaction in general. And as far as we know, all studies involving males have reported more porn use linked to poorer outcomes. And this applies either to their sexual relationship or just relationship in general. So how about mental health? How does porn use affect mental health? Over 85 studies link porn use to poor mental emotional health and poorer cognitive outcomes. People are seeing higher levels of body dissatisfaction. So you think about self-esteem and body image, greater self-objectification. So thinking of oneself as an object that can just be used for someone's pleasure. Greater support of sexist beliefs and adversarial sexual beliefs, and violence toward women.
Isn't it interesting that the world's doing backflips right now to eradicate these sort of things? If we could just get the violence away, if we could just stop raping and pillaging each other, if it just go down the list. But it's being shown right now. There was actually 100 studies linking porn use to sexual aggression, coercion, and violence. Why aren't we talking about this? That's a legit question, isn't it? Why aren't we talking about this when so many studies? It's just interesting. When you start looking for truth, you find it. Just not everybody's really interested in finding truth.
There's actually a push right now in the world that says something like porn use has reduced rape rates. Like there's pushing this idea that if we put porn out there, then their sexual aggression will get out through the porn and they won't have to take it out on a real human being. The research does not support that, folks. It just simply doesn't. There's not one empirically validated study out there that would support that statement.
And I've heard that a lot. Just get it out on porn. You don't have to act it out in real life. But what happens is, with any sort of dopaminergic active thing, like this is an addiction, your body acclimates to it. Yeah. You want more of it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not one drink that you want two. Mm-hmm. And then when you get used to two, you want three. And then your body gets used to that, and you're wanting more and more and more. This is what's so interesting about, and I guess we'll have to get into the science, but it's not just enough for someone to see it they want to start playing it out. And then they escalate, right? It's not just this that makes me satisfied anymore. I got to do more violent things or wherever that goes.
Yeah.
But we're seeing people never stay localized in one thing that used to turn them on. They go other places, which is distressing. And then we see higher rape rates and violence and all those things.
So what are the brain changes that we're actually seeing in these scans, right? What we're seeing is numbed pleasure responses. So, you'll expose someone to a pleasurable, not just sexual pleasure, a pleasurable stimulus of any sort, and they have numbed responses to that. They're just not responding in a pleasurable way. There's hyper-reactivity to porn. There's willpower erosion. And arousal addiction, porn addiction symptoms actually mimic a lot of mental health disorders. ADHD, social anxiety, depression, performance anxiety, OCD. And when people eliminate porn, they're seeing these symptoms go away. So people are like, oh, well, maybe it's just a comorbidity. So, you have a sexual dysfunction issue, and then you also have OCD or ADHD or depression, anxiety. They're seeing those symptoms actually go away when porn use goes away. So it's a causal effect there.
It was interesting. I was listening to a professor talking about this, and he's not Christian at all, has no agenda religiously, right? But he's stating this like matter of fact, like people are changing their lives by getting this addiction out of their life, because it's starting like all addictions. What was that statement? Addictions are the more you.
So you want it less, or you enjoy it less, but you want it more.
You enjoy it, yeah. You enjoy it less, but you want it more. That's what addiction does, right? You want more and more and more, but as you're doing it, you know that the enjoyment factor is actually decreasing, and it's not as fun, and it's starting to destroy your life. And so this is what people are starting to find out, like, oh my goodness, I have all these symptoms. How do I get rid of it? And the trigger for people going in to get things on the right track is normally erectile dysfunction, ED. But most other things, they would rather, they don't think it's that. But once they do deal with it, then everything else, they start seeing the flourishing in their life again.
So of all things on the internet, anything you could do, shopping, gambling, just general research, emails, because checking your email can give you a dopamine rush too. Seeing a like on Instagram can give you a dopamine rush. But of all the things on the internet, pornography has the most addictive qualities. There was a Dutch study that showed this, and other studies have echoed these results. But here's why. Pornography is what they call a super stimulus. So in our limbic system, okay, we're going to get a little bit of brain science here.
You guys okay to go super technical for just a couple seconds? Okay.
So in our limbic system, it's all about survival, okay? So our limbic system governs our emotions. It's the seat of our desires, they say, okay? So hunger, sex, strong emotions, and that's where addictions are formed.
So 2 jobs, limbic system, eat food. High in caloric value, generally. I mean, you guys realize that, have you ever thought of like, it'd be really cool to go out in the woods and just live for a while, right? And then you realize, I haven't seen a squirrel for like half an hour. How am I going to live out here? I can't eat grass. You can't, it's really hard to find things high in calories. So the body is like, hey, we really need to stock up on calories. So that's why when we have an overabundance of calories, it's really great to eat, right? Our body's like, yes. So what do we want to eat more of? Like, do we want to eat Nutter Butters or do we want to eat carrots? You choose. Right. So we're super driven. Limbic system's like, get the Nutter Butters. Those are way good, right? The second thing we're driven to is sex, right? I mean, everybody's probably realized that about themselves. Sex is awesome. God created sex to be pleasurable.
Amen.
Let's just get that out there, right? So, but this is a deep, deep drive for all of us, is to have those sexual cravings met. That's how God created us.
So, eat food, make babies. Our limbic system says those two things.
And then we see that also from creation.
Yeah.
Animals show that very, very distinctly. Like that's what they try. That's priority for them too, right?
Totally. And in fact, a lot of our studies on addiction to sexual stimuli come from animals. So you could look at studies from not just rats, obviously that's the classic study, but there have been studies with goats and studies with monkeys and studies with all sorts of animals that will repeat a lot of the same results that we're seeing in human studies. So we have our limbic system, okay? That's the back of our brain. It's kind of in the middle back of our brain. Then we have our cerebral cortex. That's our prefrontal lobes, okay? So we have the prefrontal cortex, and that's our rational side of us. Our ability to make decisions, our ability to use sound judgment, reasoning. The rational side of us says, I don't want to get diabetes, so I'm probably not going to eat that whole cake. Even though our limbic system is saying, eat the cake, stack up all the calories. So we're constantly at war. Our rational brain, our cerebral cortex, is constantly at war with our limbic system.
But sometimes our dopaminergic system overpowers our rationality. And this is what happens with an addiction. It's like, well, those Nutter Butters do look good though. And then we find ourselves eating them, right? This is what happens too with sex and with pornography. It's an overpowering of what we ought to do, right? But we're overpowered, and then we go for what we desire, which would be that limbic system. So here's a really, really important thing for us to understand. When the chemical balance of our limbic systems is off, we see things not very clearly. Everything is shifted. So think about how important our emotions are. Well, when I'm driven really hard toward this thing and things are starting to get dulled for me, like my addiction's driving me, things are starting to dull for me, then everything else is affected. That's why we have depression, anxiety, like stuff like this starts to show up when our dopaminergic systems are out of whack.
So our limbic system, in short, that the part in the back, right, the middle back, the idea is to avoid pain and not just pursue pleasure, but repeat pleasure. So from the time we're in the womb, our limbic system is being formed to say, I want more of this and less of that. So I want mommy, good, right? Snake, bad. Hot stove, bad. Ice cream, good. And at a very early age, between the ages of 8 and 11, porn, good. That's what happens because it creates that dopamine rush and that reward circuit that goes from our prefrontal cortex, which is our rational brain. There's a reward circuit. It's a neurotransmission. You can see it on a brain scan, but a reward circuit goes back to our limbic system and it says, it overrides everything. And it says, this is good. Seek out more of this. Okay? So that's where we feel rewarded, that reward circuit. And not just like sinful pleasures, right? That's anything pleasurable. We've been talking about food a lot, but even things like a pretty sunset, right? That's driven by that reward circuit as well. So, pretty sunset, good. Falling in love, good. So that limbic system is constantly basically reinforcing and telling us to seek out more of that. But here's what happens. Over the years of seeking out more of things related to sexual dysfunction, including pornography, is our brains will prune what is unused. So think about any young person, okay? It doesn't matter whether they're in the church or not. Any young person who grows up in this world who's been exposed to pornography, and whether they've been exposed or they continue to use and now would be called an addict, okay? They have some unused parts of their brain that get pruned. Those parts that say, there's rejection when it comes to relationships. There's real subjects, human beings that we're interacting with. And so by the time they get to us in their 20s, in their 30s, those parts of their brain have actually been pruned, and that's why we're seeing a lot of erectile dysfunction. It's not because the actual anatomical parts aren't working. That's not the issue. It's a brain issue that they have had these neural pathways just cemented over and over, and then the unused ones pruned for half their life.
Right. I heard one person say, well, they said a dulled trigger or like electric, I forgot how to say it, like, a dulled stimulus. There we go. A dulled stimulus doesn't send a very strong signal to the genitals, and it doesn't get it. And so that's why people are just, going through this right now. It's actually a very, very big deal in the world, even though we don't talk about it. So, and I guess that's why we are right now.
Exactly. So we've talked about how dopamine actually overrides what we called our rational brain, right? So that prefrontal cortex, that reward system will override it. And I'll give you an example. There were studies done on rats, okay? And you can look these up. It's very fascinating. So they show the rat that goes over and pushes a lever. Well, when they push the lever, they get a little hit to their reward circuit. They have a node, electronic node set up on their brain that gives them just enough hit to make them feel pleasure in their reward circuit. Okay, so they hit the lever, they feel pleasure.
You guys heard this study? Okay.
Some people, yeah. So they hit the lever, they feel pleasure, and they do it again. They feel pleasure. They do it again. They feel pleasure. They keep getting the hits every single time they hit the lever. Well, then they're presented as they know how it works now. They hit the lever, they feel pleasure. They're presented with food. So, the experimenters will put some cheese in there, and they ignore it. They ignore other pleasurable stimuli. Not only that, they take those same rats that have now been conditioned, and they put them in this maze where they get electric shocks that are painful to them if they pass over this divide. And the lever's on the other side of the divide. What do they do, though? What do the rats do? They endure the pain. Yeah, they ignore the food, they endure the pain, and they will literally hit that lever until they fall over. This is what we're seeing in this epidemic right now with humans and pornography.
It's incredible. Those same rats, you put food on the other side, and it's not enough for them to go across that pain. Yeah. They won't even go for food. They'll only go for that stimulus, that feel good, that reward. And compare that to any addiction that you guys are aware of. Yeah. We'll endure a lot of pain to get what we want, to get that dopaminergic system going. And any addiction works on this. Let's go to food. So we get hungry, so the dopamine kind of raises up a little bit. You're like, I'm hungry. I'm going to go get some food. Because dopamine drives us to motivation, to act, to take a risk, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go look for some food. Let's go find Chipotle. So you drive to Chipotle, you walk in the door, you smell, you're like, oh, yes, I have arrived, right? And your dopamine rises because you're now anticipating. Remember, dopamine reacts to anticipation, especially surprise and stuff, but you don't have that really at Chipotle. So you walk down, and you start looking at the food, and your dopamine's like, ding, ding, ding. It's hitting the roof. You're like ready to eat. And then when you get it, you start eating. There's a natural process of the dopamine falling because now you've reached what you've went for. Does that make sense? So there's a satiation. I am anticipating being full. I eat now, and now I'm being full. Now my dopamine levels drop. So this is how we've hacked our dopamine levels with pornography, is that we can have a never-ending tube of junk food straight into our mouth with never being satiated. Does that make sense? You don't have to be full with it. You can just keep on hitting that lever forever. And this is what people are doing. They're binging on it because you don't get full on this.
And what happens with pornography in particular is the Coolidge effect. How many of you have heard of the Coolidge effect? Okay, so the Coolidge effect is basically about tolerance, okay, but it's also about novelty. So this has been demonstrated even in like goats. Yeah, so for instance, they'll have a male goat, sit with a female goat, and
We're getting deep, guys.
we're going deep. So the male goat will sit with the female goat, and they'll mate, right? And they actually do reach their plateau at some point, but then they'll go ahead and experience full arousal, and it takes somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes for that to happen. They'll go mate with that same partner, the same female goat, the next day, and it takes more time for that to happen. So that'll happen, like 6 to 8 minutes. Over time, it goes out all the way to like 18 to 20 minutes to reach their full experience in their sexual intercourse. But then they take that same goat who has been taking all this time, right? Their time just keeps increasing and increasing. They'll put them with a different mate back down to the 4 or 5 minutes. It's the novelty effect. Same thing happens with rats. So, put it with the same rat. After a couple times, they actually don't even pursue that rat anymore. So they'll kind of just sit there when that female rat is put in front of them. But you put a different female rat in there, and they go at it. So it's this Coolidge effect that says, I need more and I need different. More and different. And that's what's happening with pornography. It's a never-ending pool of more and different.
And that's why people are watching porn and they're clicking on other videos. They need to get hit with a dopamine hit with a dopamine hit. And they say that besides heroin and cocaine, that pornography and orgasm with pornography is the third highest dopamine hit you can have. So is it surprising that we have a lot of addicted people, right? People just don't want to talk about this because there's a lot of people addicted about it. And they want to say it's okay, but then they're suffering from all these things, but they don't want to say it's pornography because they're addicted, right? One of the first things we do is lie to ourselves about what the cause is. And we try to hide it. I mean, it's typical.
Yeah.
So when we start talking about pornography, we have people going, why are you talking about that? That's fine. Isn't that what people say when there's an addiction happening?
Yeah.
We go into denial. No, it's not me. I'm good. I can handle it. Yeah. Me? No. Right? We talk to a lot of addicted people. This is what we do until we're faced with the truth of how it is affecting our life.
So if cocaine and heroin can give you a greater dopamine hit, why are we not seeing the same levels of addiction? So here's the reason why. Addiction of any kind stands on a 3-legged stool. Okay, so imagine a stool sitting here that has 3 legs on it. Do we have any on the platform? No, okay. So it's a 3-legged stool, okay? And the addiction, whatever it is, to pornography, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, gambling, Amazon. It all stands on this 3-legged stool, okay? And those 3 legs are accessibility. How accessible is this thing, okay, that you're struggling with? How affordable is it, affordability, and anonymity. These are the 3 legs that any addiction will stand on.
Can I do it without getting caught? Anonymity.
Anonymity, yeah. How anonymous can I be? How in secret can I be? Well, think of any other addiction, okay? To some degree or another, addictions have these 3 things or it wouldn't stand, okay? But how expensive is cocaine? Pretty expensive, right? How accessible is it? Well, once you have connections, you can get access to it, but it's not in your pocket 24/7, right? How anonymous is it? You have to really have some connections. You can't stay fully secret, right?
You have to risk going out.
There's greater risk. But what about pornography? How accessible is it? Very, immediately. Everyone has access to it right now at your fingertips.
We can just say, can we see the phones?
Right?
Right?
How affordable is it? Until tolerance builds and you pay for it, it's free. How anonymous is it? Most people don't get caught. Right? So it really meets all three criteria. And that's why the three-legged stool stands. So how do we address this, folks? What do we do about this epidemic, really, that we've seen in our society? Which of the three legs do you think we can break?
Yes, you're right. Accountability. Yeah. We can't make porn cost. I don't know how to do that. I mean, it does sometimes. We can't take everybody's phone away and say, here, call them with your dumb phone. Like, like us, for example, we need smartphones to function just because of what we do. But we can kick the leg of anonymity, and that's what we're a champion of, and that's really what you guys are doing. Yes. That's why we're here. It's saying, look, I'm fallen. I'm a human being. I need community. I need help. I'm not Superman that could do everything by myself, right? And I need my brothers and sisters. I need people around me to support me in this because life is hard, and I can't do it. And so that's the first step, is realizing that there's a problem, and then starting to reach out and be honest with yourself, but also honest with someone else to start to work with you to becoming sober with this.
And every single person that got up here tonight, Brother Jake, Brother Anthony, Pastor Anthony Pizarro, they all talked about accountability, even if they didn't use that word. They said, get in the mix, get right in the middle of the group, right? Get connected, get people pouring into your life that believe this stuff and believe in you and believe in your ability to change with the power of God and those people around you. And so accountability is so key. In fact, Brother Jake was doing a little podcast intro interview with us before we started tonight, and I didn't know he was going to ask this, but at the end he's like, okay, give us one thing that will help us be saved and one thing that will help us be sober. And Adam talked about something that will help us be saved. Want to share it? Remember he talked about truth?
I said the truth will set you free. Jesus said that he was on the side of truth. We'll listen to my voice. So pursuing truth, I think that you will, it's not if you'll come to the realization that, this is an addiction, but following God's voice, following these principles, I think that you've set out very well, you can be free, and you can find that freedom.
And then we talked about one thing that will help us be sober, and I said accountability. Get connected to someone who's going to keep you accountable. And if you're like, well, how do I do that? Where do I start? What step do I take first? Talk to the leaders here. Brother Jake, Sister Denise, Pastor Anthony Pizarro, they can connect you. If it's not them, they'll connect you with somebody who can help keep you accountable. And you guys, so much research has been done on this approach to sobriety of any kind, not just pornography addiction. Sobriety of any kind requires accountability. Yeah. And so get accountable. There are different ways to maintain accountability. One of them is having an accountability partner, a mentor, and we fully recommend that. And there are other ways to get accountability as well. We recommend not blockers. We're not trying to break the leg of accessibility on your phone, but we're trying to break that leg of anonymity. So just becoming accountable to somebody who receives everything that goes across your phone. So you're not trying to get around it. That creates more of a dopamine rush, right? You're not trying to get around some sort of blocker. Yeah. But to be accountable for your time too, not just what you watch, but how much you are online. Yep. And how much you're on Instagram and how much you're on these things that push dopamine into our brains. So get accountable, and there are apps that we recommend. They're on our website. You can go to dearyoungmarriedcouple.com, and then there's a resources tab, and we have some apps listed there that we recommend. And folks, even if you're not dealing with this, Proverbs 22:3 says, a prudent person, so that's someone who's thinking, okay, a prudent person, foresees danger and takes precaution. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So foresee the danger. Look ahead. I mean, it's here. It's facing us. We have our kids are exposed at such young ages. So even if you think that it's not you that will have the problem or has the problem, well, studies would say most people in here do struggle with it, okay? But even if you think that's not you, be the prudent person that foresees danger and takes precaution. So be the example.
Right. That's all I was going to say. Be the example. You know, if you're not struggling, be the example for somebody that is. Because there are people all around you that are. Yeah. Just to get super practical, we recommend 2 different apps to go on your phone. One would be Accountable to You. The other one would be Covenant Eyes, but not the blocker, because I like Karissa said, you can get a bigger dopamine rush just trying to get around it. But it's a software that actually looks at the background text of the website, and if there's something fishy that it flags, it'll send a screenshot, a low-res screenshot to your accountability partner. I mean, wouldn't that be cool for other addictions? Look where you are. Can I get a sponsor to call him? He's headed the wrong way. But I mean, you're not just going to sit down at a party and be like, excuse me, I need to look at my phone. It becomes a community effort to help us get over our addiction. And folks, it's a real thing. If we're trying to conquer addiction, and why not all places? A lot of people, alcohol, it's so obvious and it's destroying my life. But there are other places in our lives that have to be worked on. Of course, gradually, right? We work on one thing, and God walks with us, gives us power, gives us strength, and we start changing things. And it's amazing the redemptive lift that happens when you walk with God. It is just astounding. And you know what I have to say too? My grandmother was a drug addict. We couldn't help her. She had drug-induced schizophrenia. She did lots of drugs, lots of alcohol. My dad dealt with a lot of that stuff and dealt drugs and all this other stuff. But you know what? My dad was the one who broke the curse. And now I'm here, and I'm standing on his shoulders, and I'm thankful he did that. I am. So just saying, it does matter. What you're doing right now does matter. Yeah. Your kids will thank you, even though they can't maybe thank you right now. They will. And it's never too late. It's never too late to be an example, even if your kids are grown. It's never too late to change your life. God is going to do some amazing stuff with you. Just want to say thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
God bless you all.